Ah, breakfast cereal. Just the mention of this name probably brings you back to nostalgic childhood memories of sitting on the floor 6 inches from the TV screen watching Bugs Bunny, Tom and Jerry, and Scooby Doo. For many Americans, breakfast cereal has become synonymous with sugar-filled Saturday mornings. But from its invention into the modern day, cereal has also occupied the attention of more health-conscious individuals. So, how did we get to the place where delicious high-sugar brands like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Fruit Loops, and Chips Ahoy — I mean, come on, they're selling cookies in a box and calling it breakfast — come to stand side by side with Grape Nuts on grocery store shelves? You remember those hard, chunky pebbles in a bowl that almost cracked your back molar when you asked for cereal at Grandma's house? Today, on Every Last Crumb, we're going to talk about the surprising history of breakfast cereal. Many cultures throughout the ages have enjoyed breakfast dishes like oatmeal and wheat porridge, another of Grandma's delectable breakfast specialties. In fact, the word cereal is defined by Merriam-Webster as a plant, such as a grass, yielding starchy grains suitable for food. Thus, if you were to take your bowl of breakfast cookies back in time with you to ancient Mesopotamia, it is probable that they would be confused at your suggestion that this was cereal. In fact, it's certain they would be confused because English wouldn't be invented for another few thousand years. So while people across the world have enjoyed various wheat, oat, and corn breakfast dishes that foreshadowed the breakfast cereals of today, our story, like all great stories, starts in 1863 with a conservative Christian vegetarian operating a health sanitarium in New York. James Caleb Jackson created dried bits of graham flour so hard they needed to be soaked in milk overnight in order to be edible, calling this delicious treat granula. John Harvey Kellogg. Does that last name ring a bell? A surgeon who ran a chic health spa in Michigan where socialites like the Rockefellers came to receive various health services. Later made a version of Jackson's invention and, with a splash of creativity, changed the U to an O, calling it granola. Real original name there, John. Kellogg was an interesting fellow, one who believed that a diet rich in meat and whiskey was responsible for the evils of self-pleasuring. Yes, that kind of self-pleasuring, probably the most recognizable name in the history of American cereal, believed that a diet of bland and basic foods was the secret to stopping the scourge of self-pollution that was his main reason for getting into the cereal business. One of Kellogg's patients, C.W. Post, visited the health spa and saw the potential that a bowl of cereal possessed. Elaborating on the granola idea, Post invented Grape Nuts in 1897, a product that contains neither grapes nor nuts, and in the aftermath of his invention, grandmothers across America rejoiced. What Post brought to the cereal game was a salesman's attitude, and he found early success by using advertising to sell cereal. In the late 19th century, advertising was a bit taboo, with the practice primarily associated with snake oil salesmen. However, Post, being a bit of a snake oil salesman himself, had no problem selling his Grape Nuts by making all sorts of claims, including that his product could cure appendicitis and make red blood redder. Though Post didn't invent the coupon, he did introduce the general public to this concept by offering discounts for the Grape Nuts product. Turns out, even back then, nobody was willing to pay full price for his box of rocks. With beginnings rooted in sanitariums and hospitals, cereal's future looked condemned to trod the path of bland food. Luckily for children of the future, William Kellogg, John's brother who worked with him at the health spa, was waiting in the wings. After borrowing the granola idea from James Caleb Jackson, the Kellogg's figured this whole cereal business wasn't so hard after all, and went on to make an original contribution in 1906 by rolling corn grits into flakes and toasting them in the oven, calling them cornflakes. Being the anti-pleasure health nut that he was, John opposed the addition of sugar, but while he was away in Europe, William added a touch of sweetness, and emulating Post's success in advertising, he marketed cornflakes to the masses of America. In his first major ad campaign, William dubiously advised married women to wink at your grocer and see what you get. We're not so sure John was on board with this slogan. C.W. Post had created a somewhat similar cereal in 1904 that he called a Elijah's Manna, whose box pictured the prophet Elijah receiving cereal from a heavenly raven. This imagery predictably angered the religious community, with Great Britain even banning all the imports of the boxes, and though he initially resisted this backlash, forced Post to give his flakes the more appropriate cereal name, Post Toasties. The competition that existed between Kellogg and Post motivated each of their companies to pursue vigorous marketing campaigns and also demonstrated the potential of cereal to other companies and investors who joined in the fray. Another innovation in cereal science came in the form of puffed rice in 1905. By exploding rice under pressure, the Quaker Oats Company marketed their new product as the eighth wonder of the world. I wouldn't go that far, but puffed rice is pretty cool, I guess. The next major advancement happened accidentally in 1921 when a health clinician spilled their wheat bran onto the stove, creating Wheaties. And soon their signature slogan, "The Breakfast of Champions," began appearing on billboards. Well, there were some new ideas in the substance of cereals. Eventually, companies reached a point where there really wasn't that much difference in their products. There's only so much you can do with small bits of corn, rice, and wheat flour. Thus, in order to stand out, marketing became even more important, and the most effective marketing technique was to make a mascot. Starting with Sonny Jim from the Force cereal in 1902, a wildly popular character who popped up in newspapers wearing a top hat. The mascot trend became integral to the industry. Kellogg's caught on to the idea and introduced Snap, Crackle, and Pop with their Rice Krispie cereal in 1932. In addition to creating characters, co-branding became popular. Post paid an insane price of $1.5 million during the Great Depression in order to put Mickey Mouse on the front of his cereal box, an amount of money equivalent to over $25 million today. This should give you an idea of how much money these companies were clearing on boxes of toasted corn. Walt Disney, to whom Post paid this extortionate amount, used his profits to produce the company's first feature film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, in 1937, launching the most dominant media enterprise in history. In time, embedded advertising became prevalent, a practice in which mascots and characters would pitch cereals to children within the programming of radio shows. In the first radio series for kids, Skippy, a mischievous adventurer, would stop in the middle of his shenanigans in order to sell kids Wheaties. Mascots, embedded advertising, and co-branding became commonplace practices for selling cereal. In perhaps the strangest side chapter in cereal history, the Ralston Purina Company invented the first wheat check cereal as a means to feed those who followed Ralstonism, a racist social movement that believed in mind control. Maybe if the CIA had used checks instead of LSD during the MK Ultra, then the Cold War would have ended decades earlier. Cheerios were invented in the 1940s and would go on to be the most popular cereal in American history, selling over 139 million boxes in 2021. Following World War II and the settlement of the American suburbs, sugary cereals became more and more popular. Kellogg introduced Frosted Flakes and Tony the Tiger, voiced by Walter Thurston for over 50 years, who, interestingly enough, also sang "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch" in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Television advertisement changed cereal sales forever. The relationship between television and cereal runs deeper than kids eating it in front of their favorite cartoons. The companies behind the brands recognized the value of TV ads to their businesses and helped fund advancements in television technology, even helping color picture come about. With television, consumers, especially kids, could actually see the product being sold to them. Thus, by funding color technology, cereals with the most colorful mascots achieved the upper hand. The space age brought us Quisp, a pink alien who waged war against his enemy Quake the Miner. In this era, Quaker also introduced Captain Crunch, whose full name, almost unbelievably, is Horatio Magellan Crunch. Horatio Magellan cereal still rips up the roofs of children's mouths everywhere. In the 1970s, cereals with monster mascots became more and more popular, with Count Chocula, Frankenberry, and Boo Berry amassing lifelong followers. Here, Cocoa Pebbles and Fruity Pebbles first appear. As more more and more televisions popped up in American living rooms during the 1980s, cereals that were branded with celebrities and pop culture references thrived. Mr. T, Cabbage Patch Kids, Donkey Kong, and the Smurfs all sported their own sugary cereals, and companies benefited from using already existing entities because it saved them money on advertising costs. Because consumers already loved and trusted those selling them cereal, companies did not have to create characters and campaigns from scratch, minimizing the risk of a new mascot flopping. The trajectory of cereal manufacturing trended towards higher and higher sugar content as soon as it left the sanitariums. Sugar sells because it tastes good and, well, it's addicting. Though most parents were smart enough to know that these sugary cereals weren't the healthiest option for their kids, these cereals weren't necessarily regarded as ridiculously unhealthy throughout the 20th century. This more wholesome perception of cereal was in part due to advertising, with companies perhaps misleading consumers about the effects of sugar, but scientific studies also downplayed the adverse health risks of sugar. By linking heart disease to dietary fat and cholesterol, Harvard dietitians Frederick Stare and Mark Hegsted largely ignored the role that sugar played in creating health issues. These scientific studies informed government attitudes towards health and were normalized in public opinion. When the food pyramid was introduced by the USDA in the 1990s, carbs, including cereals, made up the bulk of the pyramid. How the Harvard studies came to the conclusion that sugar was not involved with heart disease has been called into question, mainly because the study was started and funded by the Sugar Research Foundation, a pro-sugar lobby that supported the interests of companies who sold sugary cereals. This is what one might call a conflict of interest. Health-conscious consumers began to catch on, and the science has since backed up the perilous realities of excess sugar. In the 1990s, mothers began to balk at the extraordinary amounts of sugar in sweetened cereals. Having begun as a food invention for the health-conscious individual, cereal had been hijacked by companies who understood that sugar sells. After so many decades of healthy options being turned to the side, granola made a commercial comeback as organic and natural foods became more popular among mainstream Americans. Thus, while sugary cereals still remain popular, health brands like Kashi, who was acquired by Kellogg's, have been able to carve a spot in the market. Since the early 2000s, cereal brands have pivoted to marketing themselves as organic or nutritious or free of genetically modified ingredients. Thus, today, some cereal is closer to where it was in 1900 than what it was in 1980. Though John Kellogg may not have been overly joyed at how some people spend their time, he would probably offer his support to the angry mothers demanding sugar be taken out of cereal. Cereal sales have mostly been declining for the last couple of decades. Kellogg's faces lawsuits over their nutritional claims, and they recently faced a worker strike that impacted their manufacturing capabilities and profit margins. The company has announced that it will be splitting up in order to pursue more growth opportunities, and they've signaled that they are less concerned with the revamping cereal brands than with exploiting more profitable opportunities in other sectors of the food economy. What started in a health sanitarium kitchen has turned into one of the largest corporations in America, a company responsible for so many of the brands we see in the breakfast and snack aisles of our grocery stores. Post, too, has been struggling with cereal sales. General Mills isn't in as rough a shape as some of its counterparts, but the company appears to be pivoting toward hot cereal, a new trend in the market. Regardless of where cereal goes from here, some brands will never go away. The practice of eating sugary cereal while watching classic cartoons is an American tradition, and new morning rituals involving organic whole-grain cereals are happening in kitchens everywhere. Though cereal may never again reach the heights it once enjoyed, it has ingrained itself in American culture and is still a staple of households everywhere. So, what is your favorite breakfast cereal? Do you drink coffee with your cereal? Then you may be interested in this video right here.